I return to you. Oh, the end, the turning of the tide. Sorry, is that how it goes? Breaking my screen. I hope you do not mind that I'm eating and drinking, feasting like a drunkard and a glutton. References. Yes, I thought we'd jump right back in, but first I want to speak to you about a specific kind of fish called the Nephesh. That's a terrible pun on Nephesh. Nephesh, because in verse 20, which is where we are now, Genesis 1 verse 20, Nephesh, the word, the Hebrew word Nephesh, which means throat, it comes up for the first time. And it's an important word because it is what is used to describe the soul, the person. Now, there's a cat destroying my carpet, but to return to it is also a Nephesh, according to verse 20 here. What it means is throat, and if you think about it, then you are a living throat. What does that mean? That means that everything that you are, from your heart and the sort of center of your will, if you want to look at it in a scholastic sense, your kar, to your sort of hands, which are the outermost extremities that you have that you can use to defend yourself and also to equip yourself and so on, to the intelligence of your mind, to the mobility that your legs give you, all of this, to the kind of tracking that you can do with your eyes and the sort of planning that you can do with your eyes and the other senses that you have, the hearing and so on. It's all there. It all serves, especially your mouth, to breathe, to be inspired, because spirit is just the Latin word for breath. So the breath of God, the Spirit of God, Ruach also means spirit. So in the Hebrew of the Bible that we're currently reading, that is also a part of what the Nephesh does. It sort of allows God to pump your lungs full of His life. And it also allows Him to, in a more mediated way. So the Spirit, the breathing is more of an immediate kind of interaction that God has with us. He pumps us full of His life-giving air, breath. But also, He sort of, through the mediated process of creation and the fruit of the tree, which is also how we then later on see He spreads His gospel through the fruit that people bear as His trees of life in His garden that He cultivates, namely His church. Whoa, very typological. But anyway, we see that through fruit, through food, through bread, through this biscuit, which has coconut in it, which is lovely. It's a very nice biscuit. He also nourishes our physical body. So the Old Testament especially is not Gnostic. It is not sort of the anthropology of the Old Testament is not comprised of a spirit and a body. There is a spirit, a ruach, but it is the breath. It is God, what God sort of from the outside pumps into you to make sure that you stay oxygenated. And there is the body, namely the flesh, the basar, which God's Spirit will not contend with forever, which is why He shortens the lifespan of the human being eventually. And you also drink, so the water of life from the well, the Samaritan woman. Just give me a second. Let me just have a civil conversation with the cat. I return to you again. So the Nephesh, that's what we were talking about. And you can kill a person by just crushing their throat, because you prevent any passage of the necessary life resources from entering into them. So I feel like that. Anyway, if there's too much background noise, I'll be back again. Just give me I don't fit into the small corners the cats fit into. So let's see if we have quieted the disturbance for now. But the point is, the Nephesh, that is what you are. You are a breather. You are an eater. A drinker, a glutton. So kind of theme appropriate, unintentionally theme appropriate beginning to to the episode. Nephesh. So let's get right into it. I think I'm going to read from the King James again, without stuffing stuff in my mouth. So, chapter 1, verse 20. It begins. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. So, the waters bring forth fowl and fish. So, which means in turn that there's waters above the heavens which bring forth fowl, and waters below the firmament which bring forth fish. And these are living creatures. It says here Nephesh is translated as creatures, and here it is translated as a creature, that hath life. So let's look at the Hebrew, which says Vayomer Elohim. Sorry, I actually want to try and read it. I want to change the format quickly, but my browser has stopped working. So anyway, I'll just read it for now. Vayomer Elohim Ish Ritzu Hamayim Seretz Nefesh Chaya V'of Ye'ofef Al Haaretz Al Pnei Rakia Hashamayim. Right, there we go. So, let abound the waters with an abundance. Sheretz, I don't know if I said that correctly earlier, but sheretz, an abundance. So again, there's always like overabundance with God. He never does things in an ascetic way. He's always like, fill it up, let it overflow. Those that follow him sometimes become what one might consider ascetic, like John the Baptist living in the desert, eating locusts and honey. But maybe, I don't know if one can really say that that's ascetic, or if that's just a specific kind of an understanding of what the fullness of God is. Because he does eat locusts and he does eat wild honey, and it's just a kind of the limits look a bit different to the limits that we're used to, I guess, that these people have put on their life. So I don't know if it's necessarily ascetic. It just probably isn't like gluttonous. Okay, let's see if I can catch a cat and put a stop to its mischief now for the final time. There we go. It is done. It is finally complete. Okay. So now you have a bit more insight into the dramas of my life. Oh, it's so difficult. Cats. Anyway, sheretz. The swarming things comes from the verb sharatz, to swarm, to team, which is cool. And here we've got the figura etymologica, which is a Latin term for the etymological figure or form of the, but what it actually means is that you've got the same word. So you'll have like let abound with abundance is how they translate it here, the waters, which is like it emphasizes the abundance that's going on, the fullness. It's just like fish for days, kind of like when the disciples throw their net out when Jesus commands them to. They get fish for days, man. Like they have Yishritzu sheretz, an abundance of abundance. So, or in this case, it's let abound an abundance. Let abound the sea with abundance. So let the sea abound with abundance of nephesh, of throats, of living throats. Nephesh chaya. That's also what Adam, the man, will be called later on. He will be called a nephesh chaya, as far as I remember, but I'll be corrected if I'm wrong. And then we've got the same kind of figure of this repeated word. Birds that fly. So we've got the Orf, which is the bird. In German there's a nice word that one could use, das Geflügel. So the winged things. beings. Yeah, and so let there abound in the waters an abundance of living throats, and the winged wingers above the earth, and over the face of the firmament. So you've got the dome, and the winged creatures are kind of flying, either if you're looking up at the dome, I guess they're flying amongst the different levels. If one wants to see it as like a manifold dome that has different levels to it, and they can fly between these levels, and they can cross between the levels, or how else could one imagine it? Or you see the level, the dome, and they're flying sort of against the surface of the dome, the birds, or they fly above the dome within the shamayim, the waters above the dome. Rukia. Yeah, so there's different ways, I guess, of trying to picture this, but I quite like the one that they can sort of move between the levels, between the different shamayim. Kind of like, yeah, it's interesting, the dove and the raven in the Noah story. The raven sort of goes out and doesn't return, seeks only for itself, and the dove becomes kind of like an evangelizing bird. So it kind of goes out, traversing the world, but I don't know, it kind of brings back a heavenly message. I don't know if I'm going too far with that, but I like the idea of the dove as an evangelizing bird. Then verse 21. Let's look at King James again. Good old King James. And God created great whales. Now, this great whales is, I think, also how Luther translates it, actually, Walfische, but I'd need to double check that. And every living creature that moveth with the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. It was good. Let's have a look at the Hebrew. Vayivra, again bara, only Elohim can bara. So Vayivra Elohim, and he created who? God, and God created Eth Hataninim, and the Taninim are also kind of have a mythological background in the Jewish mind at the time of Paul, anyway, I think, which we'll get to when he speaks about mythology, or myths. So God created the Taninim, and it's interesting that here the word bara is used again, that he isn't speaking them into being, unless, of course, well, he does create through his word, that's how God creates, but it's bara also in the same vein in which he created the tumultuous and chaotic kind of deep in the beginning, the primordial soup. And the Taninim are created with the same verb. So God creates the Taninim, the great serpentine, dragonesque beasts that worm in the bottom of the world. Yes, because they are called Ataninim Ha-Gedolim, the great sea creatures. Ve'eth kol Nephesh Hachaya, and all of the living throats, Haromeseth, that move, that I think Ramas, I think that'll come again with the creatures that worm in the earth, but we'll find out. Haromeseth, Asher Shartsu Hamaim Leminehem, the Ethkol of Kanaf Leminehu, Va'ira Elohim Kitov. So again, the word kinds comes up here, so we can see there's a diversity and so on. The word is min, mine, I think. Just want to look up exactly what the root is. Mean, yeah, mean. So mean is the kind of the species. So lemine, him. Him is the suffix. Their kinds. The third person plural. So yeah, shartsu comes up again. Abundant. Those abundant worms that writhe in the waters, each according to their kind. So there's a plurality of kinds of beasts. The great Taninim, and he creates every winged bird according to its kind. Again, leminehu, according to his kind, is accurately translated from the Hebrew in the King James. And God saw that it was good, because it was as he had intended it according to his divine purpose, his divine logos, which is great, actually. It's interesting. Like, it makes more sense of John to me, the way that John speaks about everything, looking at this more closely, which is cool. So let's go to verse 22. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful. So he says this to the fish, to the taninim, and to the birds. He sort of blesses them, just as he blesses humans. I noticed that I say sort of a lot. I'll try and cut down on that more actively. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. So the fowl are the first earth-dwelling creatures, despite the fact that they are born of the Shamayim, probably, or the waters anyway. Vayivrech othem Elohim le'emor peru urvu umil'u eth hamayim bayamim v'ha'of yirev ba'aretz. Cool. So barach is an interesting word, but he blessed them. And he says, again, be fruitful, like the tree is fruitful. The word peri, the fruit, comes up the first time in the previous section that we were looking at with the fruit trees. So that's quite interesting, I think, that there is fruit that is born of the living throats as well as the trees. And that fruit is obviously the offspring, the children. And these children bear within them the seed to procreate likewise. So the whole procreation and so on is definitely built into this beginning of creation, the fruitfulness, and the spreading of the various kinds of living throats. So the living throat, that's the topic for the day, it seems like. I can go to verse 23, which saith, and everything, and evening and the evening and the morning were the fifth day. So that's how they do it. Day the fifth. The evening and the morning were the fifth day. I think we can look at the Hebrew just to have said it. Vayehi erev, vayehi voker, yom, chami si. See, so I need to chamisi. My numbers are pretty bad. I've said that, haven't I? No, I didn't. That got cut out. So, yeah, chamisi is the fifth. Yom chamisi. Interesting. But we can go right on to verse 24, which says, and God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. I've done verse 24 and 25 there. So let's look at those in the Hebrew now. Vayomer Elohim totze haaretz Nephesh chaya le'mina behema Varemes the Haithor or Haithor Eretz le Mina Vayehi Chen. Now that was verse 24. I just quickly want to check. Remes are the sort of worming things, and here we have with the great sea beasties, we have the word remes as well, or romeseth. Haromeseth, that moves, and I think it's a participle. Yeah, it is. Okay, so the moving beasties and the worming creatures in the water, the worming waters. That sounds like a cool name for a fantasy sea. Remes. So God says, let the earth, so haaretz, now, after we've had the water bring forth things, and the shamayim, the waters above and the waters below, bring forth birds and whales. Now the earth itself brings forth its own kind of Nephesh chaya, its own kind of living throat. And there are also different kinds of living throat that are brought forth from the earth. And they're categorized here as behema. That's where the word behemoth comes from. So the King James translates it as livestock, as cattle. But it can be any sort of big creature. I don't know if, anyway. So behemoth is also from this word. Big sort of, I want to say grazing creatures. And then the remes, the worming creatures in the ground, probably the insects. I don't know if reptiles are included in that. And then finally, the Chaythor Eretz, so the life of the earth, or the living creatures, the creatures of the earth, because Chaya means to live. And then we also get Chava, that's Eve's name in Hebrew, which comes from the same word. So we've got that coming up here, and then again with Eve, who is the woman. But the first time it comes up is with the fish and the taninim. I mean the taninim and the birds. The taninim and the winged beasts. Yeah, chai means living. So the living creatures on the earth. It's interesting then that we've got the living creatures on the earth, but we also have two other categories, the behema, which are probably the huge sort of colossal creatures, and the remes, which are probably the small worming creatures in the ground, like insects. So you've got insects, you've got giants, and you've got the Haithor, as they're described here, the living things of the earth. And these come out of the earth itself, out of the Eretz. Just like the human is later on taken from the Adamah. The Adam is taken from the Adamah. And each according to their mean. So, lemina. Each according to its kind. And it was so, of course. Which is great. That's how we want it to be. Verse 25 we've read already, so I'm just going to read through the Hebrew again. Vayas Elohim et chayath va'aretz lemina ve'eth ha-behema lemina ve'eth kol remes ha-adama la minehu vayar Elohim kitov. And here it goes into slightly further detail. God makes the living, the hayath, the beasts that we had of the earth, according to its kind, lemina. So we have the normal creatures, he makes them all according to their kind, so they have various kinds within their category. Ve'eth ha-behema, so and the behemoths, he makes them each according to their kind, or the livestock. The livestock makes each of those according to their kind. And then he makes all the remes, kol remes, everything that creeps, ha'adamah. So here we have the adamah, everything that creeps on the earth. So the insects, I'm imagining insects and worms and so on, because remes is also used to describe the taninim, who also probably move, in rhythm with the waves. I wonder if one could describe waves as remes. So they sort of writhe on the earth. Das Gewürm, I think, is how some German translations might have it. I remember reading that as a translation for this word, but I might be wrong. And God saw that it was good, because it was as He had ordained it. Oh. Then, verse 26. Now, this is where the human being comes in, and this is where we come into the story. And this is also already coming to the end of the first chapter. Now, the first chapter of Genesis is just insanely packed with content. I know Luther's Genesis commentary, which I read while I was still in Germany. Well, I didn't read the whole thing because it's just so long. Like each chapter and then each verse, he finds so much to draw out of it. As someone who's just an incredible scholar of the Bible and teacher of the Bible, that one can just say innumerable things about Genesis in light of the revelation, the further revelation of God, how He really does lay the foundations for everything else in here. And not just everything else in the Bible, but everything else in the world, I think, and how we engage with it as human beings. So I didn't read it. So, verse 26, and God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, that's the behemah, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So everything that is made from haaretz, but also everything, okay, so that is interesting, also everything that is made of the ma'im, and everything that comes out of the shamayim, that is every other living throat, every other Nephesh chaya, is put under the man's dominion. And now let's have a look at that in the Hebrew. It says, Vayomer Elohim na'aseh Adam b'tzel menu kid muthenu v'yirdu bidgath hayam uvof ha-shamayim uvbehema uvchol haaretz uvchol haremes haromes al haaretz. So here's another really cool word that comes up for the first time. Tselem. Oh my, the image. The image can also be like a statue that represents. I heard a sermon a while ago where the pastor said that in the ancient times, the kings would set up statues of themselves in a city, and that would be like their likeness in that city, and people would treat that statue as though the king were present in the city. So you could see, okay, the city belongs to that king, and that would be like his tselem. So it's like his representation on the earth. So it is like God incarnate on the earth is there in the Adam. God makes the Adam and He says, this will be the crown of my creation. This will be where I walk amongst my creatures. Or this will be the servant, the steward who walks like me, in my image, who walks as though he were my embodiment on the earth, my shadow. Because, see, that's another etymological curiosity I have. I wonder if tselem is related to tsel, which is the shadow. Tsel is shadow, and tselem is then the image. And that would interest me. But you never know. Often these things aren't actually related. So, Adam, in the tselem, in this like image or likeness, of God. Likeness comes then as well. Is it dorm or doom? I need to check what the root is. Kid muthenu is how it's said here. Kid muthenu. Demuth, that's how it is. Yeah, demuth, okay. It comes from dama, which is probably to liken. So the likeness of similitude, I like that word. To like or resemble. Yeah. So demuth. It's kind of like demut in German, which is humility. Which is also cool, the likeness. If you are like someone, then you're not greater than them. Again, which is what Jesus says about the master and the teacher. Damn, my drink is getting cold. Am I allowed to say damn? It's a nice Germanic word. That's another, anyway, yeah, doom and damn and deem. That's what we do on a regular basis. And it also sounds kind of like demuth, which is the likeness. That's really cool. I really like this whole image, language of image and likeness. And that if you like something, you can't be greater than it. You're always looking to it for your direction, which also means that if the Adam is not looking to Elohim for his inspiration and his formation, then he's just going to go lost, which you see happen again and again throughout the whole Bible. Tower of Babel's a great story for it. Yes, so Vayirdu, and let them rule, Yarad. So we've got Mashal already for rule, and now we've got Yarad. So Yarad is ascribed to the Adam. Mashal is ascribed to the stars in the heavens. So the Mashal probably in this context then means more something like they determine what goes on because God has set them into specific patterns. So we had like the pivot of the sun that determines how the movements of the earth world will go about happening because they depend on the sunlight and the moon for the tides and everything. And now the man is told to Yarad, he will rule as a ruler, so as a king in a way. Although Malach would be to rule as a king, but here the human then rules in the sense of Yarad. So I'm also curious to see how Yarad will then develop. Over the fish, Dag, there's a god that comes up later that the Philistines worship called Dag, and Dag is the word for fish. So over the fish he will rule, of the sea, Hayam. So man is set over Yam. Yam has no mastery over the fish in all of this. There's no reason to treat Yam as though she's greater than Adam. Adam is master even over Yam, according to God's order. And we've kind of proven that, I think, throughout the history of humanity, the way that we can navigate the seas, although there are still unexplored abysses there in its murky depths. Wow, poetical. And over the birds, the winged creatures. So it's not explicitly birds, it's the winged creatures, but that's pretty cool. So over the winged creatures, like there's Daniel fighting against a winged dragon, I think, in the Apocrypha, which I don't think is in the King James version of the Bible. But it's in the Roman Catholic Bible for sure. And I don't know if it's in the Eastern Orthodox Bibles as well. I know the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible has its own book of Enoch in it and so on. So that, but no, I've lost the plot. So let's get back to it. The winged creatures, dragons, Daniel. So we even have mastery over the winged creatures, whatever they may be, and over the livestock, the behemoth. I think we've proven that, but even probably the behemoths, the great dinosaurs and so on, wherever they were still there, or the mammoths. And haaretz. So over all the earth we have dominion, over everything that God creates in the realm of haaretz. There's no mention of Shamayim. No, there's. Okay, the birds of the Shamayim though. But then also explicitly over all of the haaretz and over all of the remes, the worming things that worm over the face of the earth. So it seems more like the birds of the sky are still in man's domain, but then only it's everything under the sky. So the yam, the sea, that's under the, because yam is the name that's given to the waters under the rakia, under the dome, and then the aretz or eretz, haaretz itself is also put into man's mastery, and everything that is sort of it and on it is put into man's hand, into his yarad. Yored, his ruling. I don't know what the participle is. Okay, I think comes 27. 27 is also really important. I think we'll end with 27. This is one that I really like, and so it's a nice place to end. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And I think I'll just read through it in the Hebrew, and then we'll start here with the next one, because this is also what chapter 2 of Genesis really goes into. And the words zachar, I got it wrong in the first episode. It's from nakav, that's the root of the female word, but nikva is the noun, and that is the female. So we've got zachar and nikva, the male and the female, zacharu nikva. And yeah, these will be interesting. But let me just read through the Hebrew, and then we can finish it off for this episode. Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam betzalmo betzelem Elohim bara otho zachar unikva bara otham, them. So that is how God makes us. He makes us in his image, and that's great. Thanks again for joining. Sorry about the many disturbances with the cat. I hope it was still sort of enriching to some degree. I'm learning a lot through this, so I'm very grateful for any accompaniment and any sort of commentary that you guys have, because I just want to engage with this honestly as myself and see, and well, yeah, and get familiar with the actual fundamental text of scripture, which is the word of our God, and often I don't find time or don't make time to do just that in its original languages, and I feel like that is actually my primary responsibility. So I really want to get into that more, and I'm very grateful for the time that I've had now to do just that. Get ready for an awkward cutting out. Maybe I can make it a bit less awkward by just making you look at this Spartan who's safe according to today's standards.